Hello, my name is Brenda Ogle. I'm from the Department of Biomedical Engineering, and today I want to talk to you about the basics of oral presentations. Hopefully these guidelines will help you both for general presentations that will help you throughout your career, and also specifically for the Biomedical Engineering Design course. These are basic guidelines. They're just something to get you started. What we're hoping is that as you evolve through the BME program, that you develop your own style, so that you begin to establish a confidence in your presentation skills, and then your audience becomes more confident in you as a presenter. So let's start with the general guidelines. I'm going to step you through an introductory slide all the way to a conclusion slide. And starting with that informative introductory slide or outline slide, there are several things to remember. First, don't make it simply a general outline that could pertain to anyone's presentation: background, introduction, methods, conclusion. You want it to be informative. So use key points, use bullets to make an informative outline, and then use those key points as headers for the rest of your presentation. And you can see that in the presentation online. Slide number 2 is my informative outline for this presentation, and you'll see that each bullet is now going to become the title for subsequent slides. The slide structure is very important after you have your introductory slide in place. All slides should be written in point format. Each point, a general guideline, should have at most 6 words, and you should have at most 6 points per slide, so that if you always remember 6 points per slide, 6 words per point, you'll never have too many words on a slide. And you always want to make sure that those points are phrases, not sentences, and certainly not paragraphs. My slide number 5 is a paragraph, and it conveys the same information that the slide before it, number 4, conveys. Number 4 is in point format, number 5 in a paragraph, and you'll see that if you look at slide 5, you begin to read the slide and not pay attention to what I'm saying. So you want to make sure that you never have sentences, you never have paragraphs in a slide. Now onto fonts. This may seem very simple, but you have to make sure you use at least 18-point font. Anything smaller than that in most presentation rooms will be too small for your audience to read, and then, of course, it's pointless. It's okay to use font to kind of guide the style of your presentation or of each slide. So for example, on my slides, the title font is 36-point, the main points are 28-point, and subpoints are 24. If you use this standard format, it helps to guide your audience through your presentation. They understand what your central themes are and sub-themes. Slide number 7 of this presentation just shows you some examples of bad fonts, complicated fonts to use. Also, never capitalize if you don't need to. It's actually very hard to read for your audience. Use of color is important. You always want to have contrasting color of your text with your background so that it stands out. Typically, or the best kind of fail-safe is white background with black or blue text. But if you do have a colored background, just make sure it's contrasting so your audience can read. You can use color like font to reinforce your main and sub-themes, but don't go crazy. Slide number 9 of this presentation shows you some examples of not using contrasting color, so using yellow font, which is always a big danger color, and also trying to use too many colors. It just confuses your audience. Also, if you're going to emphasize a certain word or phrase with a color like red, you can do that occasionally, but don't do it multiple times throughout your presentation or it will lose that emphasis quality. Again, a little bit more about backgrounds. White is typically best. You can have an attractive background to go with it, but keep it simple. In slide number 11, I show an actual background that was used in a presentation that I saw, and you'll see that it's incredibly busy, too many colors, attractive, but too busy for a presentation. So make sure you make that distinction between something you like and something that will be appropriate for the audience to understand and follow. When you're presenting your results, you'll frequently have raw data, frequently numerical data, and you want to make sure that you synthesize that information for your audience. Never show raw data. Always show graphs. In this presentation, if you look at slides 13 and 14, I show examples of poor graphs. Graphs that either are simply raw data or that synthesize the data with too many lines, too small a font, and no title. If you look at slide number 15, you can immediately see that in the month of March in 2007, more blue balls were sold than red balls, and that was the whole point of all of the graphs leading up to it, but you could never discern that in a short period of time. So make sure you're careful with your graphs, that you distill the data and show the main point for your audience. Don't make them find it. Another simple but frequently missed basic of oral presentations is to proofread your slides. When you've been putting together a presentation, you invest all of this time and energy to make sure the information is correct, but you might not take the time to look at spelling and grammar as closely as you could. So have a friend, someone close to you that you trust, take a look at it, because if you have a spelling or grammar mistake, when it's up on the screen, it's magnified, 100 times, and it's really easy to get caught up on that and flustered during your presentation. So make sure spelling and grammar is correct. And then practice. Make sure you go over it at least once or twice where you're actually speaking through it, not just reading it to yourself. It's a big difference. Also try to simulate the actual environment, and frequently you can get into the classroom or auditorium that you'll be presenting in. That way you can put your slides right up on the screen, see if the font is large enough, and begin to practice speaking through your presentation, making sure that your volume is loud enough that you're projecting. Talk to your audience. Make sure you're engaged with them and not just rattling off the facts of your presentation. Be professional, and that comes with practice. Make sure you don't slip into your everyday slang. You want to keep it at a certain level, again, so that the audience has confidence in you, confidence that you're conveying the correct information. And then think of how you want to handle questions. You inevitably won't have enough time to put everything you want into a presentation. There will be questions, and you can probably anticipate most of them. So prepare a list of questions, know how you want to answer them clearly. And then have a conclusion, 2 to 3 take-home messages that you want the audience to know. Don't summarize the entire presentation. 2 to 3 points at the end. And I encourage you to listen at the end of this presentation for the 2 to 3 take-home messages that I have for you. So now let's quickly go over some biomedical engineering specific guidelines. So for the mid-semester presentation and the final presentation. The first important thing is to remember who your audience is. Understand the audience. You have not only your peers, many of whom haven't been spending the 3 to 6 months that you have on this project. They need to understand what you're doing, as will their clients who also are not familiar with your project. However, you also have the professors who need to know that you've learned a sufficient amount of detail about your project. So you need to find that happy medium between conveying enough detail, but in a language that the audience and members, your peer members, will understand. And then, as before, prepare thoroughly. But this is a little bit different than what I was talking about before, because now you have team members. You have the whole team dynamic that you need to figure out, essentially. So you need to think about timing. How much time will each team member have? You need to think about transitions. How will you go from one person to the next? Make sure that even if it's very formal, like next, the so-and-so team member will discuss this, it helps the audience feel that flow that your presentation should have. Make sure that everyone in the group is using the same fonts, the same backgrounds. This presentation needs to feel like a single presentation, not multi-person. Make sure that the other team members are listening and paying attention to what you're saying while you're speaking, and that you're paying attention while others are speaking. If you're looking around or yawning, it may just be because you've heard it before, not that you're not interested, but the audience senses that, and they will feel the same way. And as before, make sure you know how to handle questions, but also know who will handle those questions. So now you have a multi-member team. If multiple people start to answer at the same time, it can become confusing for the audience. So make sure you know who will handle what types of questions. I have added in slide 23 a rough outline of what your BME presentation should entail. It should entail a title slide, an outline slide, problem statement, and here's where you want to make sure that you're not just copying and pasting the problem statement into your presentation. Put it in bullet form. The background material, your summary, product design specifications, the design alternatives that you considered, and actually also that design matrix that you used to decide on the final design, and then your future work. Bring additional slides and prototypes. Prototypes are always great to have, even if you don't have a finished prototype, something to really draw the audience into your project. And also, of course, a copy of your slides for your advisor and client. And then enjoy. Make sure that the audience is looking not bored and confused when they leave, but actually excited about your project. And so in the end, the 3 things I want you to remember are keep it simple, make it clear, and practice. And you'll have a great presentation. Thanks.